back to my channel My Way of Learning. இன்னைக்கு நம்ம Neet biologyல chapter 3 how do organism reproduce from class 10. ஸோ இது ஃபவுண்டேஷன் கோர்ஸ் படிக்கிறவங்க நீட் மெயின் கோர்ஸ் படிக்கிறவங்க அவங்களுக்கும் இம்பார்ட்டண்டான பாயிண்ட்ஸ் இதில் இருக்குது. யூ கேன் லிசன் த வீடியோ கிளியர்லி ஃப்ரம் ஸ்டார்டிங் டு த எண்ட், தென் only you can understand. Okay, let's get into the topic. So first you have to understand what is reproduction. The process of giving birth to the child by a parent organism is called reproduction. Why the reproduction is needed? It is very necessary that the living beings or organism give birth to offsprings in order to continue their lineage. Their heredity should continue from one generation to another generation by the process called reproduction. So it is very important in a living organism. So reproduction is the feature of all organisms, whether single cell or multicell, cellular or plants or animals, right? So whatever the living organism, they involve in different methods of reproduction to reproduce their offspring. Okay, so organism of the same species look similar because their body designs and blueprints are similar. So you can expect a dog from a dog, cat from a cat, a horse from a horse, and a tiger from a tiger, lion from a lion, human from a human only. You cannot expect another organism from another living individual, right? Okay, so the importance of reproduction in creating exact copies of themselves. So copying of DNA results in some variation each time as no chemical reaction is reliable. It is also expected that process of copying DNA will have some variation each time. The generated copy will be similar but not identical to each other. For example, if in your family you have one sibling or two sibling or three siblings, so either both are the other. So all the siblings are not similar in their physical structure, right? So that is what they are telling. The copying of DNA result in some variation each time, because there is no biochemical reaction which is reliable, and the generated copy will be similar but not identical to each other. So when a reproducing cell creates two copies of DNA, it separates out from each other one copy. So in a DNA, when they are producing two copies of DNA during the reproducing cell, one copy of DNA remains with the original cell and the other copy of DNA is pushed into creating cellular apparatus. So therefore DNA carrying is accompanied by creation of an additional cellular apparatus, and DNA copies separate with its own cellular apparatus. So from the one copy, one is pushed out and one retained with the original one. So effectively a cell divides to give rise to two cells. Okay, so this is how these two cells are formed during the reproduction process. The chromosome in the nucleus of a cell contain information for the inheritance of futures from parents to the next generation in the form of DNA molecule. This you know, right? So the DNA in the cell nucleus is the information source for making proteins. When the information is changed, different proteins will be made, and it will be eventually lead to altered body designs. So this process forms the basis for reproduction. So therefore creation of a DNA copy is the basic event of reproduction. The cells use chemical constituents to build DNA copies. I hope you have understood the importance of reproduction in creating exact copy of themselves. So now coming to the structure of DNA. The structure of DNA molecule resembles a twisted ladder. So that's why we call it as a double helix model. So it is like a twisted ladder. A DNA molecule is nothing but a macromolecule which is made up of smaller molecules of compounds called nucleotides. What are the nucleotides present? Nucleotide consists of three substances combined together. So the nucleotide in a DNA contain a phosphate, a base, and a deoxyribose sugar. So this is a nucleotide in a DNA. So a nitrogenous base. The base I have said is nothing but a nitrogenous base, either adenine, guanine, or cytosine and thymine. These are the two set of pairs. So adenine goes with guanine and cytosine goes with thymine. So it's a pentose sugar deoxyribose. The pentose sugar is nothing but the deoxyribose and a phosphate molecule. So this three substances combine together and form the nucleotide in a DNA. So the DNA of all organisms seems to be identical structurally, but at the same time DNA of every species is unique in nature. So each will be very unique to the other. So the work of DNA in the cell nucleus is to initiate and control the synthesis of proteins. What is the work of DNA? It's to control and initiate the synthesis of protein. As we seen earlier, if the protein synthesis protein synthesis which is happening in the DNA which will deferments eventually lead to the altered body designs. This we have seen. Different proteins will be made and it will eventually lead to altered body design. So it is very important in a DNA. If a DNA is changed, different proteins will be made, which will lead to the altered body design. So thus the creation of DNA copy is a basic event in reproduction which takes place inside the nucleus, and this process we call it as the replication. So in a replication, each chromosome make an exact copy of itself. So we call it as the replica of itself. So replication process is nothing but the making of a DNA copy during the reproduction time. So I hope you are clear with what is nucleotides and what is present in the nucleotide and the structure of the DNA. So now coming to the polynucleotides. What is a polynucleotide? The nucleotide, as I said, phosphate, deoxyribose sugar and a base, right? So in the base only we have either adenine, guanine or cytosine or thymine, right? So the nucleotide condense together to form huge molecule, the nucleic acid, also known as the polynucleotide. So the many nucleotides join together and form a huge molecule called the nucleic acids. So that we call it as the polynucleotide. Poly means many. The DNA molecule consists of two polynucleotide strands that takes the shape of the double helix. Okay, so which will be intertwisted spiral strands. So the DNA molecule look like a twisted ladder, as we said earlier, a pair of bases from each step on a staircase like that. Okay, so in one staircase it will be a guanine and a cytosine, and in another it will be a thymine and a adenine. So guanine goes with cytosine and thymine goes with adenine. So this sequence of nitrogenous bases in DNA, we call it as the code. So which is the code? This is the code which gives the instruction for the synthesis of proteins. So the chemical reaction taking place in a cell are catalyzed by the enzymes, and the enzymes also a protein. So when the DNA controls this enzyme production, and therefore the structure and all the functions of the cell as a whole, the DNA controls. So the sequence of events that takes place during the DNA replication are shown in the double helix strands. Okay, so these are the things happening in the DNA structure. So when you unwind the DNA double helix, what will it will be formed? Two new molecules of DNA form as a new strand of DNA build up along each of the original strand. This is how the replication taking place. As we said, the DNA copy, making of the DNA copy. So the horizontal shapes joining to strands represent the bases AT, GC, G or C. That is, AT is nothing but adenine and thymine, and GC is nothing but the guanine and cytosine. So the DNA double helix unwinds, forming two single strands of DNA. The new strands of DNA builds up alongside each of the original strands of DNA to form two new molecules of DNA. Each new molecules is a replica of the original. Thus we call it as the daughter cells formed during the mitosis are identical to each other and their parent cell, right? So as each cell receives an identical copy of the parent's DNA. So occasionally the new DNA formed is slightly different from the original due to wrong base that adds by mistake during the formation of new DNA. Most variants are harmful because the altered protein does not work as well as the original protein or may not work at all. So if variation occurs in sex cell like sperms and eggs after fertilization, the embryo may not develop properly or may die at a early stage. So these are the consequences we have during the variation. So the structure of DNA, I hope you all know who has discovered this. This was discovered by James Watson and Francis Crick at the Cavendish Laboratory at the University of Cambridge in 1953. They won a Nobel Prize for their work, which they published in the journal Nature. So that's all about the structure of DNA. I hope you all understood till. In the next video, I am going to give you a detailed explanation about the variation, types of variation. And after that video, you will be having a follow-up of types of reproduction, that is the asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. If you have any doubt, you please comment in the comment box. Like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you.